How's that? Good?
Yeah, sure.
All right. What are you going to do? Tell me what route you're going to run.
We'll stay at 10.
10 and then run out. Set, Ike. Let's do it.
Can we?
Oh, almost. John's here, so there you go. Right here.
Who's John?
That's, well, he might be the next mayor. It's nice to meet you, buddy. This is Weston Garrett. Garin. Oh, I'm sorry, Garin. And this is Coach John.
His mom doesn't want him to play football, so well, we'll see. Oh! Money.
You ready? You getting fired up now?
I gotta warm my shoulder up. Oh, man. Oh! Ah! Gotta hold on to that.
You want to do another one? Do another. Go 10, so it's 8 yards. So it's 8 yards to the yellow. So you're gonna run up.
You know, one thing I do love is helping people kind of understand where we're going, and also just kind of really trying to help people kind of move forward and kind of enter into a different understanding. Sometimes as a leader, you have to see a little further down the road.
Oh, now run to the touchdown.
Cut back?
Yep.
So I'm gonna
And it's hard sometimes. Okay, ready? Let's go to the goal line. I would say in my role, like sometimes I step into things and I'm like, I think this is the right direction to go in. So, go! Break. That looked pretty athletic, unlike your dad there. Whew. My wife has been really indulging my son's sneaker habit. He's 11.
Okay.
I'm like, Kelsey, what are you doing? Like, why do you keep buying these shoes? You're gonna grow out of them. She's like, no, it's perfect. We have the same size shoe right now.
Oh.
So whenever he grows out, I get them all. I was like, man, that's nice.
Did you just outsmort the fox?
I think so. I was like, well, I guess I have to wait till he gets like size 13s.
Yeah.
I have a big foot.
My senior year, or my senior year, I was, I thought, it'd be fun to go to, play D at this small school. I was like, man, I'd kind of like to keep playing. But then I was like, well, but I want to go to architecture school in Ball State. Ball State is where I went in the end. It was by far the best in the area, and it was a D1.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized that, that dream died real quick. It's either go have fun for 4 years and then figure out grad school later, or just go do what I want to do. And that was by far the best decision, because when I got to Ball State, I was like, I wasn't going to be on the line, that's for sure. And I would have had to figure something else out. And it's like, there's like no way I was going to ever make it, right, as a walk-on or anything. And I got in, I was at the gym, I was working out, and a couple offensive linemen came in. They're like 6'8", 6'7", 330. I just looked at them, I was like, yeah, I made the right call.
Yeah.
I was like, it would have been fun to play, but I don't know. I feel like I don't think I was quite ready to be done, but I continued to play other sports through it. But I was like, I always kind of wish, man, maybe I should have gone back or gone to D3 and played a little more. But I didn't get seriously hurt, so that's probably a good thing too. So
yeah, all my lower extremities are intact, which is a big thing for a lineman, I know.
Yeah.
So no, I went to Lincoln High School here in Tacoma, and the football coach, he comes out and he's like, hey, so the University of Puget Sound's here and they're looking for players. And everybody's kind of like, oh, yeah. And then he's like, okay, so if you have above a 3.5 GPA and above a 1200 SAT score, they'd love to talk to you. Does anybody have that? And I'm the only kid who could raise my hand. He's like, John, you should talk to the University of Puget Sound. And so that's how I got swept into that conversation.
That's that's not easy. That's some serious academics right there.
Yeah, no, I was pretty, I was a pretty
You're a smart kid.
A smart kid. Did what I could.
Bookworm. You said bookworm, yeah.
Football kept me from getting beat up. I think that's what I tell people all the time, right?
That's fair. That's what. But like I would argue that I learned a lot from football, team sports in general, but football more so, because like it's a team sport, no doubt.
Yeah.
But like you rely on people so you don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Like crackbacks and things like that. You've got to communicate, or you could get, you get laid out or whatever. But it's like, you learn a lot. And then you're like two-a-days and like what you have to do as a team to get through those 2 days. I mean, 8 hours, however long it was, but it's
Yeah.
like the hottest time of the
It's
year.
a lot longer back when we were younger.
Oh, gosh,
Nowadays,
yeah.
I think they practice for 15 minutes.
Yeah, they're like in and out. All right, guys, it's above 72. We got to go back inside. No, but
they got a thin window, 50, 55, and 72.
Yeah.
You can only practice in those times.
we did every year we did like a night practice,
Oh, yeah.
which was super fun. But I remember we would run the 40 and do all these things. But they changed it up and it was fun. It turned out to be like even though it was a long practice, we did like some fun things like that. But it was good. I think football was the one sport that I was like, that is where I learned the most from football, and I had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, no, I had a coach tell me it's the most complex team sport in the world, and I think
yeah.
it's true in many ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also really reflective of kind of life in general, right? Where you have 11 different people who have 11 different things they have to do, and in some cases, like if you're a lineman, you're never going to score a touchdown, right? You're never going to do it. So you're blocking and doing that work for the team,
Yeah.
and you're not going to get any glory. The only person knows that you did it is the quarterback or the running back. And you have all these people doing different pieces. And if any one of them doesn't do their job, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
And so I think that was something I took away from it, was just the importance of doing your job. Like, this is your job and you need to do this. So when I work with my players all the time, it'd be like, hey, so everybody's depending upon you. No one cares who you are, but everybody is depending upon you. And the only time you'll be recognized, like in the blind side, is when you make a mistake.
Oh, yeah. I think part of that is that offensive linemen, we were offensive linemen. That was always the most important position, because you're protecting the quarterback and the running. And if anyone gets through, they're going to ream your ass and film the next day, and everyone's going to know about it. And you're like, I don't want to be that. You don't want to be the guy that lets the quarterback get sacked. And you can't win a game if the quarterback is getting sacked.
Yeah.
If you can't get through the line or whatever. I mean, that's why it's critical. The offensive line is really critical.
Well, that's why we used to say, you can have a perfect game, 60 plays, 59 plays out of 60 plays, you are on point, do whatever you can, and that guy beats you one play, he sacks the quarterback. If he does that once every game, he's an All-American, right? And so you can be perfect 59 out of 60. The guy you're playing against is 1 for 60.
Yeah.
He's the All-American, and you're getting shoot out.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Oh, my gosh.
So,
It's funny. It's like the way you describe football sounds a lot like politics in a way. So we got some questions for you. So first of all, thank you for coming in, and thank you for chatting football. And I really appreciate it, John. I'm very excited about this one because I've got a lot of questions, and I'm fairly new in town, so I've been here 5 years, and I'm learning more and more about Tacoma and business in Tacoma. And with Tacoma Rising, we're here to help promote business, commercial real estate, just across the board. And so first of all, thank you for coming in, and wanted to run through some questions today and just put a highlight on some of the things that you're focusing on and the high points there. And I think the first one is just right off the bat, what are your, if elected mayor, what are your top priorities? What do you want to accomplish?
well, since we're using football, I'm going to step back and use an analogy, right? So, when I was a coach, we used to talk about the fact that you have to do the blocking and tackling first. If you can't block and you can't tackle, you can't win. If you can block and tackle, you can do lots of other things, but you got to do the basics first. So when I think about kind of my philosophy, running the city future is kind of doing the basics right. So when we think about what's the basics the city does, public safety, right? No one's doing public safety except for the city. And if we can't make sure our city's safe, if we can't ensure our city's safe, then lots of other things won't come to our city. I think it comes back to infrastructure, public works, right? People depend upon us to make sure the streets are paved, to make sure the sidewalks aren't broken, to make sure we're investing in those things. If we're not doing that, no one is. And if we do it right, it leads to other investments. It brings more people in. It makes people excited. Same thing with making sure our city's safe. I think also I'm really interested in about how we get Tacoma to continue to be a place people want to live, people want to work, people want to invest, people want to raise their families. And so the higher level, politician speak would be like public safety, public works, economic development. But I think it's more just doing the basics right, doing the blocking and tackling of city government, and then also just continuing to ask that question, how do we make this a place more people want to be part of? How do we make this a place more people want to live? And so that's kind of the driving impetus of this. And I'm happy to chat about more of what those look like and what I think about it, but that's really what drives me is I love this place. I've been here my whole life. I joke that very few people have been lucky to be born in the greatest place in the world. I was one of them. And, that's something I want to continue to see, how we make Tacoma an even better place for people to live.
Towards the end, you hit a point there that I'd like to reiterate. I'm not from here. I'm from Indiana, and I spent a lot of time on the East Coast. And I will say this is home to me now.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be in Tacoma. My son, Weston, he's 6.
Yeah.
He spent most of his life here. This is home to him. This is where he's growing up. And I've never been to a better part of the country where I love it. Like, when you're from out of town, you hear that it rains a lot there, and it's dark in the winter. I'm like, well, come to Indiana, Why don't you hang out in our gray winters where it's like negative, 10 degrees, wind chill, negative 30. Like, this is an incredible place to live, even with the rain and whatnot. There's always something to do. If you really want to get out there, you'll grab a raincoat or the Vortex or the Gore-Tex, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it's
Don't
called.
get an umbrella. We'll know you're not from
Yeah,
here.
well, that's the other thing. I was like, do not get an umbrella. I said, why not? I go, because you're a tourist. I said, oh, all right, fair enough.
Well, no.
Yeah, no, and they do. So, and I know now. I recognize.
I mean, there's so few of
tourists.
at this point, we all know who the new people are anyways, right? Tacoma's a big, small town in many ways.
Right. And one part that I would love to hear more about is the economic development. So I came right before COVID, and I drove through, and I tell this story a lot, that I saw potential. And the joke is, oh, they've been saying it for 30 years that Tacoma has potential. And I'm like, I believe that it does, and you can see it. We definitely took a hit in COVID with things shutting down, but I personally believe that after all of the things that have happened, I think Tacoma's economic growth is going to be in a better position. And I think it's because we captured opportunities that weren't being looked at previously. Mm-hmm. And that's from my side on commercial real estate and business. What does economic growth look like to you as we come out of the COVID era, I'll say? Well,
I think it begins by acknowledging that you have some unique assets, and we're a special place people like. And we've chatted about this before. We have the amenities of a bigger city, but we're a smaller town feel, right? Because we have, from our museums to our waterfront to our baseball team, which I love, to our great neighborhoods. We have the things that that you find in a bigger city, but kind of a smaller feel. And I think that's a real advantage we have to play into. And I think one of the critical pieces as economic development is, we got to be the best Tacoma we can be. Mm-hmm. We can't be anybody else. So how do we be the best we can be? And think about, what are our assets? Well, we have a port, world-class port facility. We have the Joint Base Lewis McChord right down the street, which is one of the top 5 duty stations requested by people in the military. So those are kind of our 2 economic drivers. That's what really drives a lot of our economy. And then in Tacoma, we have a downtown. We have an actual physical downtown. We have cities all around us, which I won't name, that are trying to recreate that. Like, they're trying to build a downtown. We have it. We have institutions. We have colleges. We have universities. We have everything that cities are looking for here. Makes their quality of life great. How do we make sure more people know that's what's here, right? And how do we leverage that? About that Tacoma lifestyle that's really great, that you can feel welcome, you can feel home, you can be part of the community right when you get here, have all the amenities, and really sell that. Because I think the economic development component is, what is the port, working logistics, what are the businesses to work with ports, what are the businesses to work with our, JBLM. But I think really more and more it's about kind of selling Tacoma as a lifestyle, selling Tacoma as a place you want to be. And when people want to be here, businesses will follow that. Employers will follow their workers. Robert Toms, who's on the council with me for a long time, said, back in the 19th century, people followed the factories, right? So you moved to a city, there was a factory there. He said, now it's kind of the businesses follow the people, right? Where is an educated workforce? Where do you have people that are dynamic and doing things? Businesses will follow them. So I think selling our lifestyle and then really supporting some of those businesses that are growing is what's going to get us closer and closer to that. And really just leaning into some of the things that make Tacoma special. We have a lot of entrepreneurs, people starting smaller businesses. Let's lean into that. How do we help them grow? One thing I was talking to somebody the other day, like, well, why aren't we attracting these bigger businesses that, are just tired of Seattle or tired of Portland and want something different? It's like, we're attracting some of them. Satellite offices are coming here. People are setting up smaller shops here. But really, do we want to have somebody come in that hangs out for a little while and then moves on? Or do we want to help the businesses that are here grow? How do we help someone go from 5 to 10 or 15 to 20 or 50 to 100 employees and help them kind of grow in Tacoma? They're already here. How are we helping them invest and be more part of the community. So I think those are the things I want to look at, is starting with our assets we have, starting with the people who are already here, selling all that we have here in our community, because we do have a real special place, and really trying to leverage that. I think there's a bit of a flywheel effect, keep growing over time.
I think one of the things you hit there too is that I think there's small businesses here that exist, and they've existed for a long time. It's a small business community, and I don't think we've captured that, or we've gone after that as a commercial real estate market in general. And I think something that we've done over the last few years since I've been here is approach, urban workspaces. This podcast is all turnkey co-working, smaller suites. I think getting landlords to invest in their buildings, and that's what we've been doing with J Squared and MJR Development. They're investing in the small businesses here and have open arms to larger companies that come into town. So I love seeing that when people live here, when people want to come here and live here, which I think Tacoma is a great place to live. Yeah. Employers do usually follow. And then you have UW-T that's putting out more and more talent every year. So you have a talent pool that's growing here. We've got landlords coming in, doing some things and investing into it. Are there some things that maybe we could do as a city?
Some of these new developments that are coming in, new buildings, it's great. And because we require them to do commercial space on the ground floor, right? They do commercial space on the ground floor. Often they're really large commercial spaces, right? And your smaller entrepreneurs can't access that. The rents are too high. So is there ways that the city could step in and take a master lease in some of these spaces and then carve up the space and do micro retail, or bring in entrepreneurs who maybe couldn't even get into that neighborhood and get them into a new commercial space, and then over time kind of help them grow into it, and cycle people through. I think when we look at a lot of kind of our commercial spaces here in downtown or other parts of our city that have open commercial spaces, I think there might be a way for us to think about how could we help activate those spaces and actually be an incubator and launching our small businesses. Spaceworks is there, and they're doing some of that, but I think we could be doing more around that too. And so something I've been thinking a lot about is how do we work with property owners to say, hey, you've got the space. I don't know if you're a landlord, but from what I hear, right, some of the frustration is like, you just want a tenant who's going to come in and pay their rent and be dependable for a period of time. New businesses go out of business, right? It's a cycle, it's natural. So if the city is kind of being the main leaseholder, and then we're collecting the rents on our end, or we're working with a nonprofit, I think there's a way we could really kind of benefit everyone, activate spaces.
Sounds like a partnership with landlords in the city to help utilize underutilized commercial space, which I think that's kind of what we do with urban work, but we work with the landlords directly. And I think that's a great idea to bring to get the city more involved and have more of a joint partnership, because we do have businesses here that are really good at, understanding space and providing opportunities for small businesses that can't afford those large spaces, but having help support from the city, dollars and some leadership, I think that's a great idea that we could really close some of the gaps that we have.
Yeah, I think that's where we have to be a little more innovative in our approach, right? There's one attitude of, and I think is the city, the city doesn't do business, right? We do police and roads and public safety, and we create the environment, and then the businesses come in, and we support them when they're here, or they're successful or they're not. And I think the city, if we want to make sure we're a place where people want to go, but it's a competition, right? And I try to remind people all the time, businesses don't have to come here. People don't have to move here. They can go anywhere. And so part of that is thinking about how do we make this a place people want to be? How do we get to a yes and culture, not a no but culture? Like that's something I think I've talked to most of my colleagues about, and I'd like to see us move towards this. How do we become a yes and? Hey, yes, we're happy you're here, and here's what else we can do. Not a, well, no, really can't do that, but if you go through these processes, we might be able to figure something out. So I think that's kind of the culture shift around it. Being someone who's been here for my whole life, I talk a lot about, and I've said this before, that what makes me really excited about Tacoma is I am meeting more and more people like yourself who want to be here. They want to be here. And that hasn't always been the case, right? When I graduated from college at University of Puget Sound, a lot of my friends moved to Seattle, and I'm from here. I was like, I'm going to stay in Tacoma. And they were like, well, why are you there? Why don't you come to Seattle? It's like, well, I like Tacoma. It's great. And now it's the inverse. I have friends from Seattle. It's like, Tacoma's great. I wish I would have stayed. And I think that energy is good. It's people want to be here, and we need to capitalize on that as much as we can. And those people coming here want to do stuff. They want vibrant business districts. They want fun downtowns to go to. They want that. They want a more real in-person experience.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting too with Tacoma Rising, which I started almost 4 years ago at this point. And the idea was to have tours and events that promote businesses, spaces, projects to get people back engaged and to connect people locally. And what has happened is we're seeing more and more people from the north side, like Seattle and Bellevue, coming. And I mean, over the last month or two since we had the Toast of 2024, I've been getting a lot of emails and requests. Hey, would love to get involved, love to learn more about Tacoma. And then when we get that person that comes down for the first time and they're like, wow, we didn't know Tacoma was this cool. And I was like, well, you need to get out of Seattle more. You need to come down and see what we have going on. And I think those types of things, like showcasing what we have here. I don't know if you saw, we got a billboard up on I-5.
I did see. I was driving into town.
Did you actually see it?
I did.
Oh my gosh, that's so. When we started having these events, these networking events, I felt like people are starting to connect more in Tacoma and not relying on Seattle. And again, I don't know what it was like pre-COVID, but I think that if we provide those opportunities for people to connect more, and get excited, there's a reason for people from Seattle and Bellevue to come down and get excited too, because other people they're excited. Yeah. Well, why are they excited? We want to do what they're doing down there. And I think that's, like, to your point, like, I think that's really cool. Like let's provide an opportunity for them to want to come down here.
Yeah. No, I think just Tacoma is small enough that you can plug in. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what people are really looking for. I mean, I think one of the biggest things I've noticed out of COVID is people are really desperate for connections, to talk to people, to meet with people, to be with them in real life, and just enjoy those connections. And I'm hopeful that we can continue to help provide some of those opportunities here in the city of Tacoma for people to do it. In a community that we're always looking for people that want to do the work. They want to be part of it. I talk a lot about, Tacoma's had this history of, when a problem comes, we roll up our sleeves and we take it on. That's kind of always been our ethos. It's something we've done in the past. And it's something I want to continue to do. And I think it's something that draws people here. You want to come to a place where you feel like there's momentum. You feel like things are happening. You feel like you can make a difference. Some places, it doesn't feel that way. It's too big. It's too disconnected. We're too kind of isolated. But here, I think you can really do it. And our community really gets behind that stuff.
I don't want to come across as like, I don't want Tacoma Rising to be this, well, they're one side or the other. We're not. I don't want to be political with it. I just want to be realistic. Yeah. And the realism behind it is that you're going to have a social side, you're going to have a business side, you're going to have a lot of pieces in it, and they got to be balanced and equal and run through it. And we have to think about all of it, or it doesn't work. And we get one side or the other too heavy, it flops.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no one has to be here.
Yeah, you're right.
No one has to live in the city of Tacoma. And you probably don't want to be in a city where the only people who are there are people who can't live anywhere else.
Right.
You want to be a place where people are choosing to live. Mm-hmm. As Tacoma was growing, and we're talking about home in Tacoma, and we're talking about zoning and changes, I have some residents who, are concerned about change. Yeah. I mean, change is what people are really concerned about.
Right.
If we continue to be a place where people want to live and people want to invest and raise their families, it has all these effects that kind of impact other parts of the community. So when we talk about, and I've been here my whole life, I think one of the issues we have to navigate with this, right, is we have a part of our population that when they see change, they see themselves being left behind. Mm-hmm. They see themselves as not being part of it. They see this change happened and I liked it the way it was, and now it's different and I don't feel like I belong anymore. So we have to balance this change and this desire for a more vibrant, dynamic Tacoma with how do we also paint a vision so that if you're here already, if you've been here for 20 or 30 years, you're still part of that conversation. You're going to reap the benefits too. I think that's some of the tension you see, mm-hmm. I think broadly with our community around growth and changes. People feel like as new people come in, they may be pushed out. And so that's one of the things I have to navigate, in my role is how does both new people come in, new investment, it's great, it's wonderful, it helps us pay for all the things we find that are very special about our city, and it makes our city more dynamic and more fun to live mm-hmm. in. At the same moment, we also have to talk about there's things that you really love about the city. Let's try to hold on to those. I had a neighborhood proctor where people were really upset about some of the changes there. And as we did this Proctor neighborhood plan, I talked about, well, we can't just say we don't want change. That's not possible.
Right.
But can we try to identify the things that make this place special and try to hold on to them? Because if we don't, the change is going to happen no matter what, and we may lose those. So I think that's the broader conversation.
Yeah.
As new people come in, because you came here because of, for whatever reason, there's things you found here that are special. As new people are coming in, they're finding there's a reason why they're here. And so we need to get tighter around, well, what is that? What do you love about this place? And let's not lose it.
And I think on the kind of the residential side of that thought of there's a business side of that too. Is one thing that I can say is that they don't want to be Seattle here, right? And we'll get into the kind of the message of Tacoma and what does that look like? What did it look like? What's it look like today? And what is it going to look like in the future? But this idea that they're afraid of this big business of Amazon or someone coming in and taking over and changing the culture. And to be quite frank, if you don't start doing something, it will happen. If you keep the vacancies and doing things, someone's going to find opportunity and utilize that. However, if you want to keep what you have here, which is small businesses and entrepreneurs and this cool vibe, invest in that. Work together to figure out how to grow those businesses to be the bigger businesses. Like you mentioned earlier, like grow within. That's what Proctor does. I look at Proctor's, it's a full cycle neighborhood. You have young families, young professionals, retirees. There's the new developments are actually 55 years and older that they were thinking to be young professionals. So it's just like this full cycle neighborhood. And if you think about Tacoma, like downtown business being like that too, is that, listen, you have people here, businesses here. Let's focus on them, keep them here, and let's create our own path using what we have. Others will come, but if you have control of where that path is going, they're going to have to follow suit. They don't get to lead what you're trying to do. And I think that's accepting change is exactly what you're saying. I think there's all different ways of doing that. And that's where the leadership comes in my mind, is that exactly what you said, I think is perfect. It's don't be afraid of change, harness it and hold on to the things that you don't want to change and focus on the things that you know are going to and how to connect those.
That is something with the city we have to continue to come back to is because I think things didn't change quite as fast in the past. You didn't really have to think about, well, what makes this place special? What makes it unique? It's been that way for 30 years, but things are changing. And the fact that Seattle has grown so much over the last 20 years is putting pressure. It's forcing change in the entire region, and we're part of it. And we have to come to terms with what is it, and not come to terms in a negative way, but come to terms with a really positive, like, hey, this is really special. We want to keep this. How do we do it? If you want to keep small businesses and small entrepreneurs functioning, we have to be deliberate about what that looks like.
Right.
We have to think about it, right? Because they're here because rents are a little bit cheaper, because costs are lower, and they're able to get their start. Okay. As those pressures get put on the marketplace, how are we thinking about whether it's a city, public-private partnerships, working with other businesses? What are we doing? How are we helping counteract some of those pressures we're going to see? The analogy I like to use is I tell people it's like we're in a boat floating down the river and we're arguing about what direction to paddle. Well, guess what? We don't do anything. We're going to keep going that direction right there. So we got to make a choice. And if you're not happy with the direction we're going right now, arguing about where we're going to go, we're still going that direction. One thing I'd like to see us do as a city is be brave enough to have a focus and a vision to say, hey, this is where we think we should go. And people may say, well, I don't agree with that. And I understand. And we can talk about that, but we're going to try going this direction for a little while and then we'll see what happens. But we're going this other direction and no one's happy about that. So let's try something different.
There's been a lot of outside groups investing in Tacoma and making a lot of changes that I think are very positive and are actually reinforcing what I think the heart of Tacoma business is. And heart of Tacoma, it's small business and coming in and doing that. And I think when they come, they bring leadership and ideas and innovation. And I think with partnering with them and working with them and sitting down and having conversations, which we've talked a lot, and not that I'm an innovator, but there's a group of folks that we're trying to push things forward. And I think the more the city's open to talking about those things and working together, you've got J Squared Investments put a lot of money in the Road Center, this building we're in now, 1102 Broadway, MJR Development bought the Tacoma Center, and they've put a lot of money in that with Ebony and Ivory, a new office, and we have Broadway. And we've got big hopes for Broadway with Wooden City coming on, or in 1102, Kelly's Olympian opening here in the next several months out, but we're getting closer. And so we're turning this district or this neighborhood into an 18-hour district. One of the questions I know that on the landlord side and some of the business side is, what can the city do to help? And I don't expect you to write a list of things out, but those are questions that we have. One is going to be the fountain. Yeah. And again, I'm not putting you on the spot of how do we get the fountain going, but that's an important thing. That's a big fountain, a big staple right there, and it's off. And I think that's a representation of not what Tacoma is, what it was, but it would be great if we could start to think about, okay, from our side, if we're going to focus on the buildings and create these cool ecosystems, how can we work with the city to connect those buildings in a way and work through those things? And I think the economic development that you guys have been looking into the last year or so and starting to think about those things are very important. One thing that I don't know if you're open to talking about it today or not was the work you did with the encampments, moving things, I don't know the best way to describe it, but downtown with some of the work you did with moving encampments outside of the downtown area, the downtown Tacoma partnership with the street cleaning. Downtown looks different, a lot different than it did 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And I'm not sure when all that happened, but at least 2 years ago. And I know that we've had people in town from other cities and being like, wow, Tacoma's really clean. It looks really cool. And that's just not one person. Yeah. That's multiple people coming in. I'm like, you're damn right it does. It does look good. Can you talk about what that process was like? Because I thought that when I heard about that and that you were involved, I was an instant fan of that. I thought that was great.
Well, it's a great question, Reid. Let's start back a little bit. So when I got on the council, one of the things I was really passionate about was litter, trash, and graffiti. Yes. Right? Like keeping Tacoma clean. And Tacoma has this reputation. Tacoma Roma. I've been here my life. Tacoma Roma.
Oh, we're going to get into that next.
Seattle's dirty backyard, right? And so we have this kind of reputation. And so one of the things that I've been really clear about is I'm going to do everything I can to fight that reputation, right? So the most basic thing we can do is to make sure if trash hits the ground, somebody picks it up, or we have a place for people to put it. So I got on council. I really want to talk about litter and trash. And so one of my passion projects, COVID hit. We stopped addressing encampments. People were ordering much takeout food. The city looked like a mess, say end of 2020, early 2021. So in 2021, I worked with the mayor to set up this program, first called Tidy Up Tacoma, which was taking money and really actually doing a citywide litter cleanup program, focusing on our business districts and making sure they're clean and appealing, getting trash cans put in, really like trying to think about how do we kind of do the most basic work of city government, keep the streets clean. And so that was a big investment we made. Along with that, I was the one who helped kind of bring forward the camping ordinance, which addressed encampments. And it was basically said within 10 blocks of where we're offering shelter for people experience homelessness, you couldn't have an encampment. And the whole push I made at the time was, and continue to believe, is encampments are inhumane and unsafe for people, right? We shouldn't have people living in encampments. And we're providing shelter. We've invested heavily in shelter in the city. We have many options, including a tiny home village that's a block from my house. And we want those people to be safe. They've come in, they're in shelter, they're trying to move on with their lives, they're getting either mental health counseling, they're getting substance use disorder counseling, they're working on getting their documents, getting jobs, moving on to housing. And we can't have a bunch of encampments outside that are also causing problems, because we see that large encampments that aren't addressed they're magnets for crime and criminal activity. Not maybe because of the people living there, but because they're vulnerable and people are attracted to it, and there's a lot of problems with them. So I passed that ordinance and we've started removing encampments. We're moving people into shelter and housing. It's an ongoing effort. At the time I said, this is not going to end homelessness, but what it's going to do is address this issue with encampments, these large kind of encampments that have taken over large chunks of our right of way. And so far, we don't have those anymore. We have, there's still people who experience homelessness. You still see them out there. We're working hard to get them shelter and housing. There's other things we need to get to, which is more addiction resources for people. It's mental health care for people. And I can talk about what we're doing around that too, if that's where you want to go. But we don't have the same challenge with the large encampments. And I think that makes our downtown a much more welcoming place for people. And I've had people come to and say, wow, Tacoma's really clean. But Reid, the thing that drives me crazy is the word they also use is sterile. It's like, it's sterile. Yeah. And it's like, well, there's areas where there's stuff happening. We should go there.
Right.
And I think that's where we come back to our conversations, which is how do we make this it's great, it's clean, it's safe. How do we make it more vibrant, more active, more things to do? And Broadway's a good example, right? Broadway kind of pins between our convention center. So people are coming here for conventions, and you walk all the way up to McMiniman. So there's like this corridor where you could see people walking up and down. And our city-owned theaters are right in the middle of it. So we already have some city assets in here. And, so we have the plaza across the street here that Pierce Transit owns. So I think there's a lot of city-owned properties and right away where we could be thinking about creative streetscape and making it more friendly and open for people. How do we redesign it that way? Pacific's traditionally kind of been the heart of downtown. Pacific's a 4-lane highway. Yeah. Right? I walk on Pacific all the time, but it also doesn't feel like a place you might want to be walking along. We can work on that. We've done some streetscapes investments, and as you get closer down on towards the end, as you go down to Schuster Parkway, it feels much more pedestrian friendly. And we've done some things, but I think that's what we have to do, and we have to think about as a city, how do we cultivate a pedestrian experience that makes people want to get out, walk around, and just be in the city. That's one of the benefits we have at Hangway Downtown. We don't need a place where, the mall has lots of parking. You drive in, you can walk around, but that's not, I don't think, what people are looking for right now. They want that cultivated pedestrian experience where I can walk down this street, there's shops, there's bars, there's restaurants, there's cool stuff to look at, there's a fountain that actually operates. And I think we can do that. And I don't think talking about Broadway in any way means we can't do more. Right?
Oh, I agree.
I think there's one of the challenges in Tacoma that we have to continue to get over, and I understand where people come from, is we have to recognize that investing in one area doesn't mean I'm taking from you.
Exactly.
Like investing here doesn't mean I'm taking from you. It could mean that I'm investing here and then I'll get to you too. It could mean that we're investing here now, and that's going to have spillover effects in other places, right? If Broadway becomes more vibrant, it will spill down onto Pacific Avenue. It will spill up the hill. And I think we just have to have that clearer vision around, like, this is the goal. We're going to invest here, but here's how we're leveraging it. Because I'm really passionate about it.
Well, I think part of it too is that momentum. Yeah. Like the city, for me, follow where the momentum is. And right now it's on Broadway because you have landlords investing, you have businesses investing. We have a lot of restaurants opening up this year. And it doesn't mean that we have to turn backs to Pacific or other areas. I mean, there's some great spots on Pacific, and it is a 4-lane highway, and a large portion of it. There's the super block that eventually something's going to happen there, but that's a larger hurdle today. But a smaller one would be, hey, maybe there's some things that we could do now while we're game planning for the future on Pac Ave and some of these other areas. Like, we can sequence these things by working with the community.
Well, you're a football guy. I mean, I'm a football coach, right? So one of the things we always talk about is you run to daylight.
Yeah, exactly.
Take what they're giving you.
Right.
So if I'm coaching my offense and it's like, all right, well, this gap's open. We're going to run there.
Right.
Is that my game plan? No, but
we want to win the game.
But we want to win the game, and that's what they're giving us.
Right.
And so I think there's a sense of, whether you want to use the analogy of the low-hanging fruit or where the momentum is, or run to daylight, whatever it is, go where it's happening.
Right.
And push. Right. And keep going.
Set an example.
Yeah. Been here, Tacoma Dome's roughly my age, right? And I love the Tacoma Dome. I wish it was more sports centric than it is now, but I understand why it's a concert venue. But I look at that whole area down there. How do we make that more of an entertainment district? How do we make that more a place people want to be?
That would be nice.
I think we chatted about light and power in Kansas City, right?
Yes.
And I think, the example I've always been given is, well, Kansas City doesn't have a basketball team, hockey team. They just have, but they have this arena. and they have this vibrant light and power district. And I think that's another thing we're missing too, which connects to downtown, which is we're bringing people in to the convention center, to the Tacoma Dome. And right now, if you go to a concert, if we're lucky, you may stop at one of the restaurants somewhere. But more likely than not, you're driving in, you're parking in the lot, you watch a show, you get out, and you drive home. There's a lot of lost opportunity there. You know, what if we had more bars and restaurants and shopping around that area? Maybe a hotel or two. So you come to a concert and you stay and you spend money and you invest.
Yeah, that's great. All right, cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you. When I first got on council, I've been there about 8 months. We had a church next to my house decided they're going to set up this tiny home village right next door. And so as you can imagine, nothing is more popular with your neighbors than setting up a homeless shelter a block from your house. Neighbors weren't really happy with that. You know, they're like, why would this be here? Why are you putting this in our neighborhood? Why is this coming here? And I spent a lot of time explaining to people, hey, you know, this is a great opportunity. It's going to help women and children and families get out of homelessness, and that, you know, other neighborhoods had stepped up before. And I thought, I can't in good conscience go to a neighbor and say, you're going to have to put this next to your house when I wouldn't do it myself. I spent many days, weeks, months talking to people, having cups of coffee, doing all this stuff. And the woman who owned the coffee shop across the street was really angry with me about setting it up. So we set it up and it opens and there were no problems. It was great. And then about, 6 months later, I go to the coffee shop and I'm talking to the woman and she's like, yeah, it's not been a problem at all. It's been great. And she said, actually, one of the women walked over next door from the tiny home village into her coffee shop really early. And she's like, what are you doing? Where do you live? Do you live in the neighborhood? And she said, well, I live across the street in the tiny home village. And the owner asked her, he said, well, what do you think of that place? And the woman just started crying. She said, it saved my life. And so the coffee shop owner tells me this story. And then she says, what can I do to help?